Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? The green-eyed monster. Beware, for my appetite is hard to satisfy. Once I have sunk my teeth into you, savored your particular taste, it is very hard for me to let go. Think of when you suck juices from the bone, relishing every last drop of roasted meat, or the times when you lick the plate greedily, trusting that no one is watching, sauce dripping from your chin. That is like me, feasting on a most delectable dish. You do not need to be marinated, tenderized, or steeped in spices. I enjoy you quite as you are, yet it is remarkable, your ability to flavor yourself to my liking. Sometimes sweet, sometimes salty, always spicy hot. Oh yes, the dish you serve might seem slow, cooked, but passion is always the flame that roasts you in the end. Basted in your own juices, I just turn the spit, watching the flames lick higher. Curse me if you will, mock me if you must, but I only gnaw on your bones because you tempt me. And like a dog with a bone, you know I must leap and grab, shaking you in my jaws. Yes, you can say my appetite disgusts you, this frenzied feeding. But I am only such a glutton because you heap my plate ever higher. If I feast, it is only because you throw such rich pickings my way. I grow, fatten myself on your largesse. The bounty of you, scabs on your knees and scars upon your heart. I lurk in the shadows of your nursery, sniffing out the moment that is ripe for me to bare my teeth and bite. Your baby sister, silhouetted against the nursery window, wreathed in light. Your mother dozes in the rocking chair. The words of a lullaby stream from her mouth, even in sleep. She rocks and croons and kisses the little head. You wonder at this new picture, this piece, so smooth compared to the rough and tumble of time with you. At the door, you watch. Suddenly an intruder in your own home. Knowing the interloper can't enter, mustn't break this peace as then noise. Babies' cries will cut like glass, scenting the air. I smell the musk of your mother's slumber. The baby's sweet new smell, clean of the reek of age and pain, and what you feel when I sink my fangs into you for the first time. You flinch. Of course you do, and try to shake me off. But I clamp down all the harder. Look, I say, shaking you like the rag doll that used to bring you comfort. Look at how she holds her up to your father. Look at how he is enfolding them both in his arms. Where are you in this golden circle? A dark shadow cast out and forgotten. I bite until I feel your resolve snap, a broken wishbone, and then I know you're a dish I can feast upon my whole life long. I eat my fill and lay you down, chewed, stripped clean, only able to lie there, staring up into my clear green eyes. But sometimes sweet treats can sicken. That first taste, like a candy kiss, can cloy, and soon it is salty foods I crave. I wait my time, hunger growing, growling in the pit of my stomach, louder as the years pass. When I can wait no longer, I prowl to the pitch where you practice every week. Coach is handing out the accolades: best pass, best team player, and the one you covet, man of the match. He walks down the line and stops by your best friend, shaking him by the hand, slapping him on the back. Stealthily, I latch onto your ankle and sink my teeth into your soft, pliable, and welcoming flesh. And with a small whimper, you let me feed. Others go to the locker, get washed and changed. And you stand there, alone. I gourd and guzzle while you watch him and the girl you long to talk to, a dancing moth around his flame. Yes, sometimes the salt you baste yourself in, week after week, game after game, night after night, streaming down your face and soaking your pillow, tastes sweeter than all the candy you can buy. But what is my particular favorite, you ask? Well, as you're a fellow epicure, and you won't let it rest, I'll confess. Steep yourself in spices, give it all a good cayenne kick. Set my mouth on peppery fire, for I like a blast of heat the best. Passion. Yes, that is the marinade you should steep yourself in. Ladle after ladle of thick, oozing passion. And you, poor, tender fool, that is just what you do. Watching them kiss after he brings the cup home for the team. Picturing them hand in hand, kicking up the leaves as the autumn wind lifts their hair and hearts. And as Christmas sweeps in, her snowy mantle wrapped tightly about her, you are roasting in the furnaces of hell. Lying down in the heat you radiate, I feed and feed, growing fatter than the goose and all its trimmings, glistening with fat. I bask in the gluttony you permit me, my green eyes forever trained on you. Indulged, I wax corpulent, rolling with my folds. A Falstaff with fangs. Still you toss me titbits, curled in your bed, picturing your lover, encircled by another's arms. He is faceless, nameless, a fear made flesh which you feed me from your hand. We are never satiated, even when we walk down the aisle, turn and watch. With predatory eyes, the vision of your lovely bride, regarding you now, more morsel than meat, like a thin scrape of butter on a meager scrap of bread. I feel almost compelled to apologize on the behalf of others. Such a shame the family never comes to fatten you up, or that sporty friend doesn't pop around for a beer. And your wife? Well, perhaps the less said there, the better. At least, you can rely on me, patting my head. I'm your trusty companion, no longer a loathed monster, rather a loyal pet, forever walking at your side. Am I living in a haunted house? I lay in bed reading a horror book when I see movement from the corner of my eye coming from the other side of the closed curtain. I slowly lower my book, my mind screaming at me not to. There is a shadow floating on the right side of my window. At first, I thought it was the shadow of the flag, flapping in the wind, but quickly realized this is no flag. I stare at the shadow as it moves up, then to the left, then down, then to the right, before repeating the cycle again. What the heck is it? I mutter. The shadow changes shape repeatedly until it stops, and now resembles the head of a dragon. At first, my curiosity peaks, but then an unexplainable fear overtakes my senses, and I am on the verge of leaping out of bed. Whatever is distracting me does not bring peace my way, but a terror that will affect my lifetime. I thank God the curtain remains closed, for I do not care to see what is producing that shadow, for I had a feeling it will cause my sanity to leave me. Yet there seems to be an unknown force pulling me to the curtains. The shadow floats by my window for eternity, haunting me. I cannot pull my eyes from this shadow. Thankfully, it eventually dissipates, and I can relax. A weight lifts from my body, and the fear dissipates. I get up from the bed, wondering if I should go over to the window and throw open the curtains or exit the room. Restroom break, I say to myself as I open the door and walk down the hallway to the bathroom. This is the first eerie episode I had encountered in this house I recently occupied. A one-story home with a garage, living room, dining room, kitchen, laundry room, 3 bedrooms, and 1.5 bathrooms. No talk of evil spirits by the past owners, but would they honestly say such to me? For they did not look like such fools. They were the first occupants when the house came into existence, and all went well for them. That is what they say to the ignorant future owner. For the next week, I did my best to explain the bizarre episode. At first, a floating balloon entangled by the pole of the flag. but I never saw a balloon changing shapes by itself. My imagination tends to run wild, especially when I am reading a book. Could this be my imagination at work? I purchased a couple of small dogs to keep me company not long after. Not intimidating to the human world, but hopefully toward the ones from the beyond. It made me feel much better to have another living being in my house. A month went by when the next episode took place in my house. "Get out of there!" I call out to Bingo, the mischievous one, who is trying to get into the fireplace, for I have thrown the covering to the bacon into the place. As I went back to the recliner, I thought I heard a noise come from the back door. I stop in my tracks and listen for a time, but only hear Bingo moving about. I look around, not seeing Ringo, so possibly him. The dog's food and water dish are in the laundry room, close to the back door, so very will possible, so thought nothing of the matter as I go over to sit, and back to the book on the Crusades. Not long after I started reading, I heard the noise again. It sounded like something tapping on the door, then tapping the floor, then back to tapping the door. I sat there for about a minute, listening to the episode. "Ringo!" I called out. The tapping stopped. What is that dog doing? I get ready to walk around the corner and into the kitchen to the laundry room, when I hear a distinct sound that stops me in my tracks. The sounds of a heavy boot walking from the laundry room toward where I am. I look around, trying to find something to use as a weapon. I see the small baseball bat lying next to the chair. I quickly grabbed the bat as the steps came closer. I raise it up, ready for the intruder to come around the corner. If the intruder has a gun, my life will end. But I will get in a good swing or two, I hope. I continue to wait as the footsteps cross the kitchen floor, but seems to be taking too long to appear in front of me. I stand there, not sure what to do. The steps stop, and the anxiety goes up. For is the intruder going to appear, or do I go to it? I ponder if I should call out, but it would more than likely come out as a squeak, so kept my mouth shut. Perspiration covers my body as fear grips me. I stand for who knows how long, trying to decide what to do. Decision abruptly comes forth as I step forward toward the kitchen, with the bat raised to swing. I near the entrance to the kitchen, wondering if I should jump out or peek around the corner. Just get it over with, I thought. I leaped out, prepared to swing, but there was no one there. Instead, Ringo looked up at me. I looked toward the laundry room, seeing no movement. "There is no way you could have made those sounds," I said to Ringo. Ringo walked past me into the living room, leaving me to confront the intruder. I meandered through the kitchen toward the laundry room, preparing for the intruder to leap out. But when I entered the laundry room, there was no one there. I checked the doorknob, locked. What could have created those noises? I muttered. There was only one other place I had not checked out, and that was past the laundry room and into the bathroom. The room only had a sink and a toilet, so there was no space for the perpetrator to hide. I walked to the bathroom, seeing no one in the room. I went over to the window and saw it latched shut. "Nothing," I said. I turned around and was about to leave the bathroom when I heard the footsteps again. They started on the other side of the kitchen, coming toward me, but my eyesight saw nothing. I grabbed the doorknob and slammed the door shut as the steps entered the laundry room. I quickly locked the door as the steps came up to the door and stopped. I had the bat raised, ready for whatever tried to break in. If I still had my sanity, I would realize the bat would do nothing to my invisible terror. What am I experiencing? I thought. Too much horror I'm taking in that is bringing madness upon me. I am not a believer in ghosts, but is this what I am encountering? Am I living in a haunted house? I mutter. As I mutter the words, I hear the tapping on the floor, then on the back door, then back to the floor. This went on for a time before it stopped. Then the footsteps started up again, heading to the other end of the kitchen, ending. I slowly opened the door, seeing there was no one around. I need to get out of this area. I rushed toward the living room, at one moment feeling quite cold, but soon I was in the living room by the fireplace. Both dogs lay on the couch, looking at me. "What is your problem?" I can imagine them saying. I went over to the coffee table and grabbed the remote control, put on some sound, and hopefully that will calm me down. I turned on the television and turned up the volume. I did not want to hear the footsteps and the tapping. Part of me wanted to leave the house, to never return. The other half, thinking whatever was creating the noise was not causing me any harm, just freaking me out, I muttered. But not freaking my dogs out. I sat down in my chair, with the bat nearby, knowing the bat was useless against a ghost. But it was reassuring to have it near me. Anyway, the rest of the night, I sat in the chair watching the tube, then dozed off to wake up an hour later, wondering if the ghost was still around. There is no way I'm going in that kitchen. I eventually dozed off again, waking up off and on throughout the night. My day at work was miserable due to lack of sleep. I spent the entire time contemplating on what I should do. I could move out, but then I would end up losing much money and wind up in an apartment, which I do not want to do. I could go to a church and have a priest bless the house. I could have a psychic or ghost hunter come in, or just live with it and get over my fears. If harm did not come my way, then I should be okay. But what about my sanity? It could make it an interesting home life, I muttered. My life was dull overall, so the reason I read so much of the fantastical. Living this kind of life in my house might be interesting. Of course, part of me screaming I was insane to have such thoughts. It came to me living at the house, encountering footsteps once a month, and little, odd things happening. At first, scared, but eventually I became numb. Soon, I was like my dogs, and just enjoyed the roof over my head, no matter how bizarre it was to live under it. Gardenia. The family left Gardenia around 5 in the morning. They quietly packed their things and left, stopping only to clean the fridge, because they felt strongly that a dirty fridge would speak poorly of them and their abrupt departure. When they left, the fridge was clean, and there was still blood all over the walls. The blood did not belong to anyone in the family. It had started pouring down from the ceiling, and the family decided that was the final straw. It was one thing when specters appeared at the top of the stairs with 2 heads and horns. It was another when knives were flying across the kitchen, narrowly missing the head of the family's youngest, who was only 2. It was startling when the family dog suddenly grew to 5 times its size and ate the family's sedan. All of that was unfortunate. But the family had gotten Gardenia for a steal. They were apprised that it had a colorful past. They were a bit put off by it, but then they saw the guest bathrooms, and the very thought of having guests, let alone guest bathrooms, was simply too good to pass up. It took blood coming down the walls 3 weeks later for them to vacate. Once they were gone, the bloody devil manifested out of the television and made itself a sandwich. It was proud of the family. When they had first moved in, it hadn't expected them to last more than a few days. It figured the first time the lights flickered and the cicadas swarmed the toilet, they'd be out the door. That was the thing about some families. You never quite knew how much they were willing to put up with for a house with a fireplace and good insulation. The bloody devil ran its clawed paw along the wall and licked up a smidge of blood. This batch was too spicy, it said to itself. I should have used less red pepper. That night, as the bloody devil was falling asleep in the guest bathroom tub, it heard a sound. When it opened its 5th eye, it saw what looked like a little girl standing in the doorway of the bathroom. For a second, the bloody devil thought the little girl was one of the daughters from the family that had fled that morning. But when it blinked, the girl was gone. Just to be safe, the bloody devil turned off all the lights in the house so it could scan the darkness for any signs of living energy. When nothing turned up, it chalked the whole experience up to a bad dream. It returned to its bath, but when it did, it found that the shower had been turned on and steam had filled the room. There, on the mirror, was a message written in what appeared to be a human hand. We're back. From that day forward, the bloody devil, who had haunted Gardenia since the day it was built on top of a collapsed pagan temple, never knew a moment's peace. Children's toys, would materialize in the living room. Toys with sharp edges and wheels that the bloody devil would step on, yowling as it fell backwards into the fireplace. Dirty dishes were somehow always in the sink, despite the bloody devil only eating off Ouija boards. At night, as it tried to sleep, it could hear the sound of a man and a woman in the next room. I'm telling you, we don't have the money to stay an extra night. We'd have the money if you took that job my father offered you. We've been over this, Natalie. I am not taking a handout from your father, so I guess you have to tell the kids why we're leaving Orlando early then. The conversation didn't scare the bloody devil as much as it made it very, very anxious. Were Natalie and the man going to stay together? They sounded so unhappy. Were they going to break up? Why was he hearing this when they weren't even here? That wasn't the only time it heard voices. You are not going out dressed like that, young lady. Jessie's mother lets her go out like this. That's why Jessie's going to end up in a documentary someday. What does that even mean? The bloody devil would hide behind the couch whenever these arguments were going on. It couldn't locate the source of the voices, no matter how hard it tried. But it also couldn't bear to just sit on his throne, made of vole skulls, and pretend it didn't hear the conflicts. They were always so domestic. It preferred higher stakes, life and death, passion and terror. Hearing a mother and daughter go at it because the daughter put on too much eyeliner made the bloody devil want to rip off one of its two heads, the one with the ears. After a century of living in and haunting Gardenia, it was the taco night that made the bloody devil abandon the house. It wasn't expecting any trouble, what with it being a Tuesday, and what with taco night always being something the family seemed to look forward to, based on what the bloody devil could surmise going off only voices and the satisfied sounds of chewing, while a mysterious odor of sour cream and pico filled the air. It made the bloody devil hungry, but it couldn't eat anything because there didn't appear to be any food there. It was torturous being exposed to such lovely aromas without being able to feast. It tried to placate itself by gnawing on the leg bone of a unicorn, but it just wasn't the same. The taco night started out fine, as best the bloody devil could tell. Plates were laid out, soft shells were placed next to hard shells, and the dad made a corny joke about tortillas, as he always did. Groans followed, then some clanking of silverware and the sound of mastication. The bloody devil bit down on what little bit of meat was left on its unicorn leg, but it fantasized about what the ground beef must taste like when covered with shredded cheese and lettuce. That was when one of the daughters announced that she wouldn't be attending her own high school graduation. The bloody devil had no idea why the teenager chose this instance to make such an announcement, when everybody seemed to be having such a nice time. But as far as the bloody devil could tell, this was just something teenagers did. They found themselves in a pleasant moment and felt a compelling urge to ruin it. Right away, there was a fracas. The mother informed her daughter that she absolutely would be going to graduation because she and her husband did not work and save to send their daughter to a fancy private school, only so that she could skip the grand finale. The daughter then pointed out that the mother doesn't work, so really, it's just the father who should decide if the daughter has to go to graduation. There was a pause. While the bloody devil imagined, the mother waited on the father to back her up. But then the father just said, "I didn't go to my graduation either." And then the mother exploded on the father, which led to the teenage daughter shouting in defense of her father, while the youngest child cried, and one or two middle children began to loudly sing some song about gravy and a turkey's neck for no discernible reason, other than maybe trying to diffuse the tension or quell their own anxiety. At one point, it sounded as though someone, probably the mother, went around picking up the various plates full of soft shells and hard shells and pico, and began smashing them on the floor. This led to more noise, and somebody ran out the front door, slamming it behind them. The sound of the door slamming was like a shot going off inside the bloody devil. It had to leave. It had no choice. It couldn't live like this. Maybe it should have stuck around for the children. After all, the bloody devil might have been made from the nightmares of demons and the spirit of Lucifer. But it was at least civilized enough to know that children need a stabilizing force in their lives. And maybe the bloody devil could provide them for them. But how? No, it was no use. Sticking around wasn't a good idea for anyone. The bloody devil left Gardenia around 5 in the morning the very next day. Shortly after it departed, the family returned back to the home. They had taken a Ouija board from the fridge before they left. The bloody devil was always leaving its dirty Ouija boards in the fridge. They soon discovered that the board was a kind of portal into the house, and when they saw the bloody devil growing comfortable in their home, it made them angry. Not angry enough to do anything about it, of course. A bloody devil was still a bloody devil. They had no intention of going back. But soon, living in the rental home they occupied after leaving Gardenia started to feel suffocating. They began to argue. The eldest daughter began to act out. The middle children took to writing scary messages in steam in the small bathroom they all shared just to scare their youngest sibling. Toys were left everywhere. It all built up to a taco night that was, without question, one of the worst nights in the family's history. It wasn't until the next morning when one of the middle children brought the Ouija board to her mother as she was tossing another dirty dish in the sink. She pointed out that the bloody devil appeared to have left Gardenia. Natalie, the mother, moved the board all around so she could see each part of the house, and sure enough, there was no sign of the bloody devil anymore. "Well," she said, "I suppose that means we can go back." As for the bloody devil, he never went back to Gardenia, but that's probably for the best. It doesn't mean he loves the family any less, but that's mostly because he never loved them in the first place. Black Book. What is the value of a human life? Henry often wondered this himself. Sometimes it was all he thought about. A person is born, goes to school, gets into a career, and maybe even settles down and has a family. So many factors go into someone's life that it is hard to quantify each variable. Yet Henry constantly tried to answer the question, and that's why you need to sort the shelves the way the company trained you. Do you understand, Henry? Henry blinked as his manager's words brought him back to reality. He turned to face the red-faced man. "Sure thing. I'll get right on it." Apparently unsatisfied with his response, the stiff-necked manager left the aisle with a huff. He didn't know what the manager was upset about this time, but that was his usual response when his boss was angry. Henry felt relieved when he was left alone. The store initially hired him as a cashier. He tried to do his best, but his people skills were subpar. His boss didn't take long to give Henry a new position. Now, he was in charge of stocking and sorting the shelves. It was a peaceful job, except when customers asked him where certain products were. If he had to listen to another customer asking him where the sour cream was again, Henry shook his head at the thought. That was one of the things about people that bugged him. They never even seemed to attempt to look for stuff themselves. It seemed they thought their time was more valuable than his own. During his first few days of employment, the other staff would ask him many questions. "Hey, how's it going? Did you catch the game last night? Why do you just stare off into space sometimes?" Henry would always answer their questions the same way. "I can't talk right now." They seemed to catch on that he didn't want to speak to them. His mind had more important subjects to think about. He only took this job because Henry thought he could think about life from a different perspective. His real work had been stalling for some time now. Henry just felt like he needed some inspiration to propel him forward. That was what he hoped to achieve working at a grocery store. So far, all he had achieved was to get a piercing headache anytime he spoke to anyone. As he stocked the shelves, trying to remember how they had trained him, he yearned for something society said was wrong. He checked his wristwatch and saw it was 4:45 p.m., almost halfway done. Soon, Henry could pursue his real passion. Time went by in a blur for Henry. It was 5, then 6, then 7. And before he knew it, it was almost time for him to leave. He looked at the shelves and saw they were all in perfect order. All that would be left for him to do now was clock out and walk out the front door. Most people would then get into their cars and drive home to their families. Henry had no family, at least none that were still alive. That thought used to pain him when he was a kid, but thinking about it now, he felt nothing. He had gotten used to living alone. Besides, since he was alone, no one could disturb his work. Henry had been watching one of his co-workers for the past few weeks, a bright and full of life young female who would be attending a well-known college in the spring. If overheard gossip was to be believed, she had a promising future. She was, however, known to be promiscuous. Everyone at work knew about it, and every time her boyfriend would come to pick her up, Henry could feel the tension in the air. Some guys she had been intimate with even worked at the grocery store. Many of their co-workers would show disgust with the woman, but Henry didn't have an opinion. He was more curious about it than anything. A woman who seemingly has a perfect life does something consistently to jeopardize everything. It fascinates him. That was why tonight he was not going to be going straight home. Henry already had everything planned in his mind. He just needed to wait. And patience was one of his strong suits, if nothing else. Henry walked to the back of the building and observed the woman, Ashley. She was going about her usual end-of-shift routine, seemingly without care. Once Henry had clocked out, he pretended to be doing some paperwork. Essentially, he was just stalling for time until Ashley was finished talking to the other employees. As the minutes passed, Henry wondered what she could be talking about for so long. That was another thing that Henry had trouble understanding. Small talk. What was the point of talking about subjects both sides knew the answers to, but pretended they didn't? It utterly baffled him. This was why his work was so necessary. Soon, 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 I will have another piece to the puzzle. I know I am so close to understanding, so close to knowing what makes a person a person. I just need more experiments, more time. Finally, he saw a woman with 2 blonde pigtails and wearing her uniform with modifications, revealing more of her body than was appropriate. Looking at her, even Henry could see why all the guys went for her. She was fit, perky, and seemed to be, on the outside, a ray of positive energy. However, he wasn't interested in any of that, because his interest in her came from a different place. Okay, see you guys later. Ashley said this, and waved goodbye to everyone she had been talking to. They waved at her and said an unsynchronized goodbye. After moments, Henry got up and put away the papers he had been pretending to read. He saw that no one was watching and left out the back door. His car was parked in the parking lot, and he got inside. Ashley was still in clear view as she walked down the sidewalk. With a turn of his key, his car came to life. Henry knew the exact path she would take to get home. The key to any good plan is careful calculations, after all. He went the opposite way instead of driving behind her and potentially being seen by a coworker. From his planning, he knew there was a spot where he could park his car and wait for her to walk by. Then, he would say he was having car trouble and ask to use her phone. As he drove to the spot, his lips moved upward into a smile. During his actual work was the only time he felt any real emotions. For the time being, he couldn't help the smile on his face, nor did he want to. However, once it was time to begin, he would be stoic and show nothing. The spot was empty, as Henry knew it would be. He carefully drove the car in and shut off the engine. Now, there was some time before she would arrive. It was perfect, allowing him to start the entry in his black book. Henry opened his glove box and felt around for it. His fingers touched a firm edge and the black book's distinctive leather texture. The answers to Henry's questions were within its pages, and it was his life's work. He felt like she could be the one to fit all the pieces together. Sighing as he opened the book, he knew he had thought those exact thoughts before. No, she is different. I am confident she is the one. My work is almost complete. Then I can rest. Yes, relax and enjoy life. Enjoy? What does that mean? Have I ever enjoyed anything? Yes, my work brings me joy. Henry violently shook his head in an attempt to clear his thoughts. He checked his wristwatch and knew Ashley should be passing by any minute now. The car door creaked as Henry opened it, and the ground beneath his feet made a crunching noise as he exited the car. His senses were always heightened as when he was working. Then he heard the distinctive sound of approaching footsteps. I know, right? You won't believe what she said to me after that. Her voice echoed through the night sky, and the words' high-pitched tone hurt Henry's head. He popped the hood of the car and grabbed his work bag. Pulling a rag out of it and dousing it in a potent knockout agent, he felt calm. Henry hid the rag in his pocket and bent over the engine, pretending to examine it. When Ashley saw Henry, she jumped at first. Then she saw who it was and seemed only to get more startled. Henry pretended not to notice her for a moment. Using his best acting skills, he looked up at her and put a surprised look on his face. Oh, hey, Ashley. Yeah, my car just sort of crapped out. I've been trying to see what's wrong with it, but I might be out of my league here. He could see her hesitate, and Henry thought she might just turn and run. Maybe her survival instincts were telling her to flee for her life. Ultimately, she seemed to take a breath and compose herself. "Did you need any help? You would help me? A strange man in a dark alley?" She chuckled at that, and that confused Henry. He genuinely asked her that question, and she thought he was joking. Was it because they worked together, leading her to believe she knew him somehow? In the end, Henry didn't know. "Do you need help or not? I got to meet up with someone soon." "Of course, that would be great. Thank you. Can you just hold a light over here so I can see the engine better?" "Sure." She opened her phone and turned on its flashlight. Ashley approached the car's hood and held the light high to expose the engine. "Let me just grab a wrench. 1 second. Henry went around to the back of the car and pulled the rag out of his pocket. That was when it happened, and it didn't surprise Henry. His vision started to turn red, and his head began to tremble. His ears began to ring, and he had to hold on to the car as dizziness suddenly overtook him. The symptoms only got worse and worse until he blacked out. When he came to, he was sitting in the front seat of his car with his black book in hand. He sifted through the book, remembering where he got it. It was at a yard sale, of all places, where he first saw the black book. The book seemed to call to him with its ornately designed cover. Immediately, he went over and picked it up. He remembered thinking that this book was what he had been missing his whole life. Henry gave the owner whatever insignificant amount of money they had wanted and left. That was the day his life had truly begun. Now, he had a passion for his work, his genuine work. Focusing on the present moment, he opened the book and read its most recent entry. Participant 264. Name: Ashley. Perky, attractive, promiscuous, naive, trusting, deceitful, social. Performed fingernail removal on both hands. She screamed in agony for several minutes, surprisingly. Then, she became silent. After a few minutes of silence, I proceeded with a finger removal. This elicited intense emotions from the participant, which went on for several minutes. After I removed all the fingers and the screaming and pleading stopped, more work was required. Starting from the wrist, I cut the skin and peeled it back all the way to the elbow. I took great care to ensure the patient didn't black out from blood loss. The results of the experiments had to be seen on the patient's face. This continued until there was no more skin on both her arms. At this point, the participant was slipping in and out of consciousness, and I knew it was time to end the experiment. I used an axe I bought from a camping store, and placing her head against the floor, decapitated her in 2 swings. It would have been 1 swing, but I lost my footing. It was very unprofessional, and I will take care to prevent this in the future. In conclusion, Ashley was an interesting subject, but not the one. She would not be the one to answer my questions. More experiments to follow. Henry sighed after he finished reading. He closed the book and put it back in his glove box. Looks like the book didn't find what it was looking for. When Henry tried to remember his life before the Black Book, he couldn't. If he tried to recall the memories, a great pain would follow. That doesn't matter to me anymore. I am not that person anymore. Move on. Wait a second. Maybe what I need is a fresh start. Just me and my book together. Yes, a new name and a new life. This town is getting old, and inspiration is lacking. Yes, yes, yes. He shook his head until the thoughts stopped, then rubbed his eyes. Henry checked his wristwatch and saw it was almost 6 a.m. They would soon be looking for participant 264, and the idea made Henry chuckle. There was no way they would ever find her. He had made sure of that. That didn't matter to him, though. He needed to look toward the future, for he was one step closer to knowing the value of a person's life. Vanish. I tried to be gentle. I tried to come to you slowly, revealing myself in fragments under the growing dimness of dusk. I stepped ever so carefully into the downward cast of the yellow street lamp's sepia light, sending forth first a finger, then a tentative but eager to caress hand. I moved so gently, so slowly, that I felt the cloak of darkness removed from my face, inch by inch, nose first, before there was no more hiding. I did this for you, as not to startle you. Didn't you see? I even smiled. Those sparks of kindness you all boast so easily, like the one you'd given me. And yet, you still screamed, shrieked even. A shrill shriek of survival, one of horror and fear, as if the very sight of me would be your upending. And how you ran, just took off, as if the wind came and swept you away, leaving no blame for yourself. I offered you my most sincere attempt at kindness, an approach akin to that of a person who wishes to greet a cute puppy. And how was it that you repaid me? Screaming and running away. Could you see how that would have made me angry? Do you understand why I had to do what I've done? All I'd ever wanted was to be with you, to be more like you. I just wanted to learn from you. If not for your outburst, things could have been different. I thought maybe you were different. I'd wanted you to be different. I'd hoped that you would be the one to accept me, welcome me, and show me what it was like to be like you. A glowing firefly in the night, leading me out of my solemn, and lonely abyss. I thought you would be unlike the others, who'd taken one look at me and condemned me to hell with a snarl, thrusting a spear of fear between us like a barrier. Me and them, water and oil. Two things that could never mix. I'd hoped you'd be different. I hoped it with all the blood pumping in my chest. I thought you would see how much I'd longed for us to mix, and how much I'd dreamt of the opening of your arms wide, like I'd watched you do to so many others around you. Even that bowling ball of a man I saw you squishing faces with, his arms barely able to stretch around his own belly to wrap around you as you rocked slowly together behind your bedroom window. It was such a wonder to me how he was not greeted as I was, what with the cruel things I'd seen him doing. I'd wondered how the fear would gleam in your eyes once you'd finally learned the truth about the man you let stay in your bed. All those dirty and lustful glances he'd given the children at the park when you were not around, telling you he had late meetings so he could take the long way and feed his devilish desires, window shopping the younglings as they played. Yet you did not look at him as the foul and disgusting monster he was. Instead, it was I with whom you'd shown such disgust and foulness, a violent terror shooting through those eyes at my unveiling this evening. You were certainly not how I'd hoped you would be. You were just like the others, who saw my burned and battered face, the scarred and charred mask of skin I'd been forced to present. I saw the judgment glinting between your lashes, just like the rest of them. Monster, they'd called me, without even giving me a chance, without even a hello or a flicker of pity. Even that I would have understood, maybe even welcomed. Perhaps that was what I'd been missing. A sympathizing and tender outreach. A compassionate soul there to guide me towards the light. After all, darkness was all I had ever known, all I had ever seen, save for the blinding blaze of the flames my mother tossed me into, spouting about how I'd belonged in hell for devouring my twin brother before he'd had a chance. I'd heard people say there is darkness in all of us. Perhaps I'd consumed all of my brother's when I took his life for my own. Perhaps we would have been all right if he'd not vanished before his first breath. Though perhaps not. What with the mother we had, he'd gotten the better end of the deal, I'd supposed. And what had mother expected? She, the tree. I, the apple. For years, I tried to be a good person. I tried to be anything but the sum of my scars. Tried to make friends. Tried to reach out. But you tell me how much of it one can take before he breaks. 1 year? 5 years? A decade? Try 3 decades. 30 years. Monster. You hear it enough, you start to believe it. No one gave me a chance. No one gave me the time of day. Just gruesome looks and disdained scowls. No hello nods passing on the streets or returned waves. No pleases and thank yous at the shops. Just flashes of fear and short silent submissions. Anything to end our interactions quickly. People saw me dance on a monster. So, I'd said, a monster? That's what you want? That's what you get. I'd decided I'd become the very thing deserving of those unpleasant greetings. I'd become the thing people always feared to be true, hiding away, seeking comfort in darkness, making nightmares a reality. What freedom, what relief to finally surrender to myself. Mother would have been proud, I'd thought, though I never did lift the pillow to find out, as she wiggled and writhed beneath my arms. Just a couple of minutes, Mother. You'll see your son soon. Even then, I wasn't convinced I was monstrous enough for her. After all, I'd done her a favor. Her death, my first, was much gentler than the ones who'd followed. The kindness I'd shown my mother was perhaps the last bit that existed in my body. Or, so I'd thought. The day that I met you enlivened a remaining ember I hadn't realized was still burning. There was a weak and muted flicker of something other than darkness that remained somewhere deep inside me, somewhere you were able to touch. Do you remember? That day at the coffee shop, your purple polka dot headband tied primly in a bow, your hair pulled back into a high bun with just a few curly strays dancing around the edges of your cheeks. How you'd actually smiled at me before asking for my order, and then how you'd thanked me once I'd paid, wishing me a good day. There was no grimace in your manner, no hesitation at my mutilated face. You were so pretty, so kind. Not like my mother, not like any of the others. How had I gone so many years without this perfect human? That is the most profound thing about darkness. Even a flash of light is enough to change the entire atmosphere. You were that light. So there was still goodness in the world. There was still hope for me, past be damned. You showed me that, and so I'd followed you home that day, and many of the days since then. I watched you. I protected you, like the rarity that you were. I tried to preserve your kindness, study it, waiting in the shadows for our next encounter. And when I'd discovered there was already a man in your life, I'd followed him too. I had to make sure you were safe, that no one was threatening your goodness, as if your light was already spreading to me, the way fire always does. I cared for you by taking care of him. There was no room for a pedophile in your life. He was a threat to you, a rapid of white waters sure to extinguish you. I couldn't let that happen, but after he was gone, you disappeared. The next day, when I went into the coffee house, hoping to see you, expecting to see you, sparkling with relief and joy, for finally you were free. I did that. I'd envisioned it many times, me waltzing into your shop, you ready with open arms to thank me. Me, your savior. You, my savior. But you were not there. Then, or the next day, or the next. Where were you? I watched outside your house, the lights going on in the morning, then off as the evening turned to night. But you did not leave. You'd disappeared in plain sight, left me alone, locked yourself up in your house, as if freedom meant absolutely nothing to you. Had it been one more day out there waiting, I'll admit, I'm not sure I could have forgiven you for such ingratitude. So, you can imagine my delight when you stepped out for a walk this evening, the horizon still bleeding its last drops into the twilight, like a sign. You, my last dash of hope. Monster, they'd called me. They, but not you. So, why then did you scream? Why such a vile and repulsive response at the sight of me as I stepped out into the light to greet you? What had changed between our first meeting? I did not take you for flighty, and yet you'd made my breath go raspy and harsh in our chase, as if I were a wolf and you, a delectable lamb. I'd only wished to greet you, to reacquaint ourselves after our unbearable separation, to refortify the promise of our union. That was the moment I'd realized it, those endless, suffocating seconds. You were just like the others. There was no light in you at all. You saw me as they did. Monster, imagine the anger. Imagine the betrayal. I'd only ever wanted to be with you, to be more like you. But oh, how you fooled me. You were much harder to carry to the car than I'd thought you'd be. And you certainly had a strong and fiery fight in you. I suppose that was the light I thought I'd seen. Because looking at you now as you lay on my table, there is neither life nor light behind those bright, unblinking eyes.